Good morning, everyone. I'm Kat Haist. I'm a member of the preaching team. It's been a while. Great to be back in person again. Um, I am so glad it's now the summer season. Summer in New England, hot, and then we're at a soccer game last night, hot, and then we get poured on, and now it's beautiful again. It's New England. It's a new season for so many of us in so many ways. We're now able to gather here in person for the first time in months. We can also simultaneously gather here while scattered across the internet. So welcome, online friends. The weather's shifting. Some of us are loving it. Some of us wish it were different. That's how seasons are though, right? They come, they go, they come again. That's a metaphor for life, is seasons. Before I jump into this, though, I just totally realized we didn't read our scripture. Can I get my phone, babe? Or does someone have the scripture, James 1, pulled up already? Oh, technology, fun things. Alrighty, let me back up a little bit. Passage today is coming from James 1, verses 9 through 18. Continuing from last week, James says, "Believers in humble circumstances ought to take pride in their high position, but the rich should take pride in their humiliation, since they will pass away like a wildflower. For the sun rises with scorching heat and withers the plant. Its blossom falls and its beauty is destroyed. In the same way, the rich will fade away even while they go about their business. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. When tempted, no one should say, 'God is tempting me,' for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. Then, after desire is conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. Don't be deceived, my dear brothers and sisters. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. He chose to give us birth through the word of truth, that we might be a kind of first fruits of all he created." So even James hits on this theme of seasons. And I'd say that's a perfect metaphor for life. Some of us have hit a point where we'd say we've finally made it through our previous season. Some of us would say we're still very much in the middle of our season. And still some of us would say we aren't even sure what day it is, never mind what season, because life has been crushing. Last week, we heard a message about perseverance and hope. And some of us cheered with that, feeling like that's exactly what we've done. And some of us willed ourselves to get excited about it, hoping our break is coming right around the corner. And then there are some of us who perhaps said a silent cuss word in response to the message, doubting that you may ever again find a sense of normalcy. It's exactly with this notion of seasons that James urges all of us to take pride. If the season has you poor, take pride in your place of honor, he says. And if you're rich, take pride in your season of humility. That still sounds weird to me, how he says that. And it took me several readings to make sure, am I reading that right? But it reminds me of a conversation that I heard about between a pastor of an American church and a pastor of a church in Mexico. And the American pastor says to the pastor of the Mexican church, "It must be hard for you to serve God when the circumstances around you are so challenging in a country that's so impoverished like Mexico." And the Mexican pastor turns to him and quickly says, "I can't believe how hard it is for you in America to worship God when you have no challenges and you have no need of him in your life." Regardless of our position, we're going to face challenges. The question is, how will we as Christ followers react to our trials, regardless of what they look like? Will we, in the face of our adversity, walk away from God because we feel like he's abandoned us? Or will we, in the face of plenty, also walk away from God because we don't have a need for him? It comes back to that notion of wisdom we talked about last week. What is the wise response to our present circumstances? When things really suck, what's wise? And when things have shifted and are going really, really well, still, what is wise? How does this wisdom flesh itself out in our daily lives? James says to the poor, consider yourselves exalted. People might look down on you. You might get funny looks and sideways glances. But God's heart has always been with the poor. It was the poor and so-called unwanted in society that Jesus held most dear. You, my friends, poor ones feeling like you're struggling the most, are God's prized possession. He rolls out the red carpet for you, despite what those around you might be saying. And to the rich, consider yourselves abased, not because you're worthless, but because your worth has nothing to do with your financial or circumstantial status. You are worthy because Jesus Christ considers you worthy, because of all he has done for you. Take pride in the fact that there's nothing about you that guarantees your so-called status, your so-called stature, and that your status in the kingdom isn't going anywhere. Your riches might fade away, but everything that guarantees this status, financial accounts, whatever, job security, that all can crash and burn. And we've seen a lot of that in this last year of the pandemic. Even in your place of richness, James also tells you to take pride. That's why James' description is rooted in this agricultural metaphor. Crops grow, and then they die. There's a time to sow and a time to reap. But even these circumstances can be interrupted by something out of their control. To all of us, James encourages us to take pride. Take pride. Because your circumstances, whatever they are, they matter. To the poor among us, God sees you. He knows your struggle, and he's with you. You matter to him so very much. To the rich among us, God sees you and knows you have the ability to do something to make a difference. He also knows that apart from circumstance, we're not that much different from the poor. Independent of status, Jesus tells us that those who persevere will receive the crown of life. We are God's royalty. The crown looks beautiful on you. The one who loves God. What does that love look like to you? Is it heartfelt and emotional? Is it rooted in justice for the marginalized? Is it full of gratitude for who God says you are? Is it still questioning and wondering, who is this so-called heavenly parent? Love takes so many shapes and forms, and the result of loving God is his crown of life. But this concept of perseverance that we started talking about last week is so much more than these circumstances we're going through. God's actually much more concerned about our hearts and how they're aligned with hers. Do we love her? When life is peachy and keen and we haven't a thought or concern, will we love her? When life is throwing at us its worst, will we still love her? And by loving her, will we love others? Will we walk with the wisdom that there is more to this life than what we see? See, the outward trials we face tend to reflect what we have on the inside. Temptations and trials Those words both come from the same Greek root. Temptations focus on the outer, and trials are indicative of the heart. What happens to us when we face circumstances of different types? The language James uses here becomes much more intense. The choices we have make a greater impact on us than just our circumstances. There's a spiritual piece to everything, and there's a natural progression in how all things flow. And because of that, James says, don't be deceived. He adds the term beloved to that. Don't be deceived, beloved. When he uses that term, he's trying to say, hey, this is that much more important. I want you to listen to this. Wake up and realize that we're living a spiritual life. Doesn't always look like that, doesn't always seem like that. But we can always choose to find a deeper and truer relationship with Christ. Or we can choose to squelch that. What is the wise thing God's asking you to do in response? So we have the opportunity to make this wise choice. We can turn into the light, the pure light of all humanity. We know that God created the heavens and the earth, and he created the light of day and the light of night. But unlike those lights that we can see on an everyday basis, our Heavenly Mother remains far more constant. There is no changing, no wavering. God is solid. And because of God's choice, we are born anew, representing the first fruits of creation. See, the birth of a baby really has nothing to do with that baby. It's the choice of the parents. Our status as children of our heavenly parent has nothing to do with us, but because of God our Father, of God our Mother, of their choice over us. As their children, we are first fruits, the down payment representing all that is to come, all he has to offer us. You, my friend, are God's beloved, the apple of his eye. Don't listen to the lies that tell you it's not worth it to keep pushing on. Don't listen to the lies that say, I don't need that right now. Don't throw it away. Don't slack off because it's easy, and don't give up when it's hard. Be careful to trust in your limited faculties when your heavenly parent offers you everything good and perfect you will ever need. Thanks be to God.